Professor Pallas here with the Week 12 wrap-up. Our survey this week gathered your opinions on use of the 3 factors of social cognitive theory to promote behavior change. All 3 factors are important, and there is no correct answer to this survey. When you begin work as a nutrition professional, you may find that you rely more on different factors for different clients. What is important for you to gain from this class at this time is an understanding of the 3 factors of social cognitive theory and how you might use them when counseling patients who desire behavior change. Always remember that behavior change can be very difficult for people, and behavior change is a process. As you begin your career as a professional, rely on scientific theories such as social cognitive theory when you are developing interventions for clients. You may find that as you work with a person, your focus will narrow down onto one of the 3 factors of social cognitive theory for a certain period of time, and then you may change and refocus on a different one. You may also find that all 3 factors seem to influence some people equally. So in this survey, in this class, this week, we found that 12% of the class selected reinforcement as the most important factor of social cognitive theory. Reinforcement was selected since positive outcomes promote continued performance of a desired behavior. 82% of the class selected self-efficacy, since people who feel successful about a behavior or lifestyle change will be more likely to continue performing that behavior or lifestyle change. And 6% of you selected reciprocal determinism, since one factor influences another, and when positive reciprocal interactions occur in a program between the personal, behavioral, and environmental factors, a person is more likely to continue on that program. Again, there's no correct answer for this survey, but it is interesting to see how your opinion fares against that of your peers. In our discussion, this week we focused on the role of physical activity in a weight management program. In an effort to facilitate a sense of discussion, I asked you to conclude your post with a question. Each of you would then respond to these questions in your peer responses to each other. The questions that you posed at the end of your initial posts were insightful and showed a high level of thinking. It was really interesting to read the questions you wrote. And on this slide here today, you can see some of the questions that some of you asked your peers. Several of you questioned how to help a client find time to exercise, or how to find more appropriate forms of exercise that would be more effective for weight management. One student asked, how would you address a client who was obese or possibly morbidly obese, possibly bedbound, and unable to begin a traditional exercise program yet? That's a really interesting question, and it's a real-world situation. My advice would be that you may want to consider bringing in an occupational therapist or a physical therapist to help design the very beginning physical activity for this person. If you're dealing with someone who's not able to bend over to put on their own shoes and socks or tie their shoes, you're obviously going to start with a very different level of physical activity for that person. Another student asked an interesting question. Should exercise be mandatory in order to earn employee health benefits? That's something to think about as we move into public policy, and we will be discussing that during week 14. Overall, I think this was one of our strongest discussions to date. I really appreciate all of your efforts, and I will continue with the concluding your initial post with a question approach for the next discussion. Due dates. We have our third and final quiz this week. That quiz will be due Sunday by 11:59 p.m. And now we're moving into the final group project. That group project will be due by May 5th at 11:59 p.m. One of the groups has reached out to me. They're starting to develop their obesity prevention and treatment program. They had some questions. If any of you have questions or concerns, please reach out to me. Another paper that you will hand in during the very final week of class, finals week, is your final reflection paper. This paper will be due May 10th at 11:59 p.m. The final reflection paper you will write by going back to your very first post from the very first survey that you answered. And then you will write a paper reflecting back on everything you learned in regards to what you were thinking when you started the class and what you're thinking now at the end of the class. I will talk more about that final reflection in the wrap up next week and the following week just to give you more advice on that. But it should be an interesting look back at what you were hoping to learn in the class and what you learned. We do not have a group discussion this week, but there are more group discussions. They will continue to have an initial post due on Wednesday and 2 peer responses due on Sunday. Let's take a minute and wrap up what we've learned this week. This week we learned that physical activity is an important element in a weight management program. Physical activity programs may need to progress slowly, at times very slowly, for people who are obese. These programs need to be written individually to meet the people's needs. We also learned that different levels of activity intensity will burn different macronutrients as fuel, and when appropriate, a combination of activity intensities may be a good approach for a client. It's important to always remember to consider, and when you are able to, honor client preferences for physical activity. People who like the activity or who are interested in it are more likely to continue that activity. What's next? As always, stay up to date with the readings and watching the class videos and lectures. Please complete the weekly class survey. Also, we have our quiz 3, our final quiz, which is due this week during week 13. We have our final group project coming up that is due on May 5th. And then your final paper, which is a reflection, will be due during finals week. Thank you so much for your time.